We are live. Hello, everyone. Let's just give it a minute or so to see who's going to join us. Waiting for that little preview to show us people. It is just after 11:30 here on a Tuesday afternoon in New Zealand. Gee, are you in Sydney this week?
I'm in Sydney, so it's just after 9:30 here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If you are here live, please say hi in the chat, in the comments. We'd love to know who we're talking live to. And if you're watching the replay, and if it resonates, please also give us a wee wave so we know you've seen it. I'm here with my dear friend Georgia Vavasor. Georgia is a master teacher of Vedic meditation, and one of the most experienced teachers worldwide. Her ability to simplify the complex, silence the chaos, and calm the distress has helped thousands of her clients gain perspective and prosperity in all aspects of their lives, including mine. But Georgia hasn't always been this way. As an ex-corporate assistant vice president, she is now the perfect bridge between business and boundlessness. Welcome, G.
Thanks, Marika, for that beautiful intro. Very happy to be here.
So I personally wanted to talk to you today because I find this time of year one of the most stressful, especially when it comes to running a business. You know, we're about to head into the busiest marketing month of the annual calendar. It's the most expensive time to be marketing, and it's always so cluttered and stressful. And also by this time of year, you know, small business owners are so exhausted by now, but there's this expectation to push through to year end. And then there's everything else that's going on in the world, right? So that makes a lot of what we're actually working on feel meaningless. It's a really overwhelming time right now for a lot of people, and especially for small businesses. So let's see in our 15-minute chat if we can alleviate some of that overwhelm.
Okay, let's do it.
So let's start with, you know, some practical tools or techniques that you can recommend to help anyone feeling like this.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I kind of want to touch on is, you know, if we're feeling like that at this point of time in the year, then it's a really good time for us to start to think, well, is this how I deserve to feel? Is this how I want to be feeling at this time every year of all the coming years? And to maybe start to put something in place or a plan for what we're going to change about how we can approach next year. Because, you know, if we just keep doing the same old thing, we keep getting the same old results. And if it's not feeling sustainable and it's feeling, you know, like a real strain in the nervous system, what we know from stress and the impact of that it has on health is that it accumulates. It's cumulative. So one year it might feel like, oh, I pushed through, but after a few years of pushing, the body eventually is going to show signs of wear and tear, not to mention how we actually feel and how we're able to show up. So there's a couple of elements there. There's our physical health, and then there's the way that we're experiencing life, because, you know, we get stuck in the doing, and then there's very little being. There's very little actual presence, enjoyment, receiving of what it is that we're able to experience, and all the blessings and joy that life has, and the satisfaction from a job well done and all of those things. And then there is, you know, what we can actually bring to the table, what we can offer, how much can we lean in and rise in these times of pressure rather than being swept under by the overwhelm. So, you know, I think if that's the way that people are feeling right now, then it's a good time to just consider, well, what could I do a little bit differently heading forward? And I'll certainly come back to you know, what we can do right now, because we want a little bit of immediate advice. But I do think, you know, in my experience, it doesn't happen by itself. We can't just sort of get along and hope for the best. We have to put a little bit of effort into our, mental health, our physical health, and to cultivate an experience where we get to be in our best state and enjoying life whilst also, lending our skills and abilities to the areas that we feel called to provide and give. And so it often really involves bringing something in, a tool, and obviously the tool for me is Vedic meditation, but you might find other tools. The benefit of having such a tool where you're tapping in regularly is that it's consistently bringing you back to your baseline, that deep inner silence, that state of inner self, which is really where the place that we want to be operating from. And that helps us stay out of the noise of everything that's coming up, from the news to social media to, hype about certain things. We can actually drop back into what is there for me to offer in this moment, and how do I feel I want to respond, and what direction do I want to be taking? Do I want to just be a sheep and go with what everyone else is doing, or because this is what people say to do at this particular time, or can I really tap into what's coming through me? And without a tool regularly tapping in there, we're going to find it difficult to access that, because the stress brings all of the nervous system up, the energy up to the mind. We can't actually be kind of in the body. So when we're practicing regularly like that, and practicing something that relieves stress in a really powerful way in a regular fashion throughout the year, rather than, oh, now I'm really stressed, so now I need to do something. But when we're making it sustainable, consistent, what we're going to find is that when those peaks come of pressure, we can respond. We've got a lot more bandwidth, a lot more resilience, adaptation. I mean, Marika, you've just been on a retreat with me, which was very timely to kind of really put you in a position to be able to move through this period in a much more adaptive way. So, my first piece of advice is to, let's see if something isn't working, let's see what can we change, what can we bring in and cultivate to change things for the next time this period rolls around. But we find ourselves here right now, and I think, perspective is very important, that it's a short period of time. It's not the be all and end all, and to make sure that we're taking time to come back to ourselves in whatever way that is. And if we don't have a tool or technique at the moment, then certainly if we do, then, the interesting thing is sometimes when we feel really stressed and there's a lot of demands, we think, oh, well, I just don't have time to, meditate or do breath work or, go for a walk or whatever it is, when actually that's the time that we need it most. And we're just going to pay the tax for that later in terms of our mental or physiological health, or how well we're able to operate. The ideas that we have access to, the flow of creativity is cut off by stress. So we want to just be able to take a moment and say, oh, I think I'm really feeling a little bit fizzed up by all of this, and what do I need to bring myself in balance? What's going to support me in this moment? And that means what will support me to show up in business, in personal life, in my body, whatever it might be. All of these things are interlinked. We can't sort of divorce the business self from the personal self, from the home self. We want to have that one unified whole that actually can show up in all of those spheres in the same way. And we're not dropping the ball in one area because we haven't, really given time for the nervous system and for ourselves to come back onto that, that baseline level of self. Now, if we're not meditating, we might not have as deep access to it, but there are things that ground us naturally, being outside, being in nature, taking breaks where things feel a little bit more expansive. So seeing nature, being at the weather's beautiful at this time of year most of the time, hopefully, especially in Tamagima.
So in Auckland right now.
Too much rain at the moment, hopefully, but being able to, get outside, to see some greenery, to see some beach, that brings a broader perspective, that brings more expansive state of mind, that we then take back to all of the, demands that we're dealing with, whether they be work, whether they be family. So taking those moments for ourselves and really scheduling them in, if that's what you need to do, if you get it kind of a little bit lost in the doing and the day's gone and suddenly, had all the intentions to take a moment outside or go for a walk or to meditate or be with yourself in some way, in a deeper way, then schedule it in just like you would a meeting. You know, we're not going to miss that meeting. I'm not going to miss my live with you today, but you know, why then will my live with my own self be any less important? So I think now's a time where it seems like there's less time, but it's almost more important that we're making time for bringing those practices in, you know, even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning of some kind of practice. Of course, you know, I recommend learning something that's going to give a real pack a real punch in terms of what the outcome is for the time that you're spending. But there's so many online resources that you can jump into straight away and, you know, really start to make a plan of what you want to do differently next year as well.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Now is the best time to start, because if you can pack it in while you're stressed, while you've got all this stuff going on, and then keep it up over the longer term, it really is that regular practice that chips away at the stress longer term. So in a year's time, you won't hopefully be in that same situation. Not that it's necessarily going to take a year, but I love that you talked about that regular practice, because it's not just about, you know, a tool or a technique that's going to help me just, you know, breathe and alleviate the immediate stress that I feel right now. It's actually how do we over time chip away at that so that we are creating less stress overall in our lives over the long term. The other thing that I picked up on what you called out there was, what can I choose in this moment? So how well do we know ourselves? And we talk a lot about that in marketing. You know, we're so focused on who is our ideal customer and how well do we know them. But the other part of the brand piece is, how well do we know ourselves? How authentic are we as a business and as a business owner and showing up for our customers? And I often get asked around this time of year or even a month earlier, you know, should I be participating in some of these big seasonal campaigns? Is it something that I have to do to really, you know, create that landing for next year, to hit the ground running for next year? And it always comes back to knowing yourself and being authentic. How does it feel? Is this the right time to be pushing for your business? It's a very cluttered time, and I'm totally okay. And my advice to my customers too is, you don't have to participate if it doesn't feel right, but you've got to have that baseline grounding to know what feels right at this time of year as well.
Yeah, and I think that baseline grounding also helps you really tap into, well, what's my client feeling right now? Like, I sort of am my client, you know. Often we're creating products that, or in lines of business, it's something that we feel drawn to, we feel inspired by, or we've created because it's something that helped us. And so, you know, how do you feel with the Black Friday sales? You know, asking yourself that, dropping in and actually feeling like, oh, when I see those ads come up on Instagram, you know, what's my response? Am I actually thinking, hey, this is a brand that I feel like I want to, you know, partner with and, you know, work with long term, or do I just kind of think, oh, too much noise, you know? So that also dropping in allows you to get a little bit more of tap into that innate intelligence that you have inside and see, well, how do I feel about it? How am I responding? You know, outside of my business life, how am I responding? You know, am I buying those earrings? Am I, you know, stocking up on the skincare at this time? Or am I just a bit like, oh, this is all too much? And so that's also going to give you that deeper insight about, you know, how critical is it? Because we get in that stress chemistry and it's like, I've got to, you know, or I'm actually out of myself right now. Now I'm in the stress and all I can feel is that stress and overwhelm. And so that means I've just got to do everything in case, what if. Whereas we drop back into that baseline self and we're not able to be manipulated in that sense. It's just like, okay, where do I sit on this? And I know I'm going to be okay. And I know I've got the capacity to continue to create a values-driven and valuable business. And then just simply, how do I feel? And there might be a spontaneous feeling that comes to participate, or one that feels like, not in this, you know, and I'm going to actually direct my creative energy and resources into something that feels more inspired or aligned. But equally, that feeling like actually we've got a great, new product, and this is the time when we might surf this energy this year and try it out and see. But there is a great deal of intelligence that we can tap into on that fine level of feeling as well.
Yeah. I want to talk about the importance of rest. Because if this isn't the time to push, we live in such a hustle culture. I've heard you talk about this before, and I've experienced it myself with my own practice, the creativity, the productivity. Like you say, I've just been on retreat with you, and come back, so much more revitalized from having that deep rest. So talk to us a bit about the importance of rest, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed and stressed.
Yeah, the thing is that I think what often is missing is that correlation between dynamic activity actually has its basis in dynamic rest. So if we just look at life, the days we've had a good sleep, we feel well rested, we've got a lot more energy, drive, dynamism, there's more creative ideas flowing. Let's go to the opposite end of that spectrum. Say you've been, awake half the night with a child, then you're probably going to be feeling constricted, super reactive, all the things that you have to do. You just want to be like, oh, I just want to push all of them away. I don't feel like doing any of that today. I just want to lie on the couch in my PJs and watch Netflix, So we can just see from that spectrum, this is the daily life, right? So we can see from that spectrum, okay, so how do I put myself in the best position to really be able to show up? It doesn't have to be stressful. That's the other thing, is that we feel like, well, in order to be productive and to have good ideas and to get a lot of things done, I need to be stressed. So we associate stress with productivity. It has a lot to do with caffeine, because caffeine spikes, adrenaline and cortisol, and we use that because we're tired. We'll use that to, steal energy from tomorrow, as they say, with caffeine. In no way saying you have to give up your coffee or anything like that. So delicious. But just so we understand, the mechanics, is that it gives us that boost from, that stress chemistry that comes on. And so we then associate, well, I do a little bit more because I'm quite tired in the physiology. I do more when I've had coffee, and then I kind of probably we might sense that there's a little bit of a lull, a crash afterwards, where we feel like, oh, now I feel like I've got nothing in the tank. We kind of go on that spectrum. So when we build the rest in, now sleep can be a little bit elusive because there's times where if we're more stressed, we're going to have less access to good sleep. Also, if we've got young children, then sleep is not within our control for many years there. And then we're also trying to catch up on all the years where we didn't sleep well and the incoming demands. And so what we find is sleep isn't enough in modern life based on the amount of incoming demands for us to really rise up into the most dynamic level of activity that we can have. If we top up that sleep with meditation, and the reason why I love this particular technique that I teach and have been practicing for 8 years now is that it provides rest that's 2 to 5 times deeper than sleep. So what we're doing is really topping up in a big way. It sort of doesn't actually matter how much sleep you got, because you're always going to be able to top up with something that we can control. We can actually sit and close the eyes and meditate anywhere, anytime. We don't need to get the body into a sleep state, which can be challenging for the reasons I've mentioned, or just because we're stimulated, been on the phones a lot, thinking, stressed, the mind's busy, then we don't get to sleep, all of those things. So being able to use meditation to top up, and then we feel very boosted. So we're going to be able to respond to demands in a much better way than we would be without that. We know from that spectrum, no sleep means very little adaptation energy. We're going to be reactive and have very little in the tank. We start with a certain amount from sleep, and then we boost it up again to a significant level with meditation. Then we find that we're putting ourselves in that boosted layer where we've got access to more creative flow. We've reduced stress as well, because while the body's resting, that's when it releases stress. So if we're in that deep state of rest, we're releasing stress in an accelerated way, and then we're back being in that more able to access that more expansive state where we have better ideas and an level of dynamic activity that is really unprecedented without those kind of boosting mechanisms. And so that's the piece that I think we often forget is like, oh, well, prior to learning this, my solution is just do more, just push, have more coffees, get through. And what we find is actually destroying the nervous system. I was completely burnt out by the time that I learned to meditate, where I'd be literally falling asleep at my desk in the afternoon and thinking, well, I could have a third coffee, but I know I'm going to feel kind of worse after that. And it just didn't have a solution. Whereas when I learned this and I was working in corporate insurance at the time, I would sort of sneak off and go to the shower room and meditate in the afternoon. And I'd come back and be like, oh, I'm back, Whereas prior to that, I'd just sit there and kind of count down till I could leave at 5 o'clock, which was part of being in a corporate business. But when you work for yourself, you've got your own business, it's not really the space you want to be in. I didn't want to be in that space either. So the push thing we know doesn't really work. We're probably seeing the impacts of that show up in our life. There's going to be cracks somewhere. Maybe we're reactive at home. Maybe we're fatigued and sort of feel like we're dragging ourselves through life and everything feels like an effort, like you're going through sludge. Or you just feel like this constant sense of anxiety and rushing sensation or the overwhelm that's coming in. It's because of the state of the nervous system. So if we cultivate the nervous system, and we do that really powerfully with deep rest and have access to ways that we can boost up the level of rest that we're getting, then we're going to find that that dynamic activity really flows through.
I've experienced it personally. Yes, I learned to meditate just before I went through IVF treatment to have my son Harlan, and then the most blissful pregnancy around that too. But that's a whole nother chat. And we are out of time. But this is one chat I do want to continue this month, and we're going to. Georgia is presenting next week's masterclass on cultivating flow in business. So she'll be providing all of her wisdom on how to maintain perspective, not just at this time of year, but all year round, how to work with more intention and more calm to generate more creativity and productivity in your business. So do your busy self a favor and jump into this one. Details will be on the social pages. Now, normally the $9 it costs for non-members to join the children's charity, to join the masterclass, goes to the children's charity that I set up to help Cambodian families access quality education. But given what's going on in the world, this month we'll be donating to UNICEF Aotearoa's urgent Gaza appeal. So we hope to see you there. Thanks, G. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, we'll look forward to continuing this chat and going a little bit deeper. And sending love to everyone out there. Stay grounded. Take some time. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. See you soon.